This is Cleve Gardens. On a macro level, it looks like a little bit of land, but how has this pocket of soil, grass, and trees been influenced by our social and political ecologies? Have past design interventions been successful for the community? And more importantly, as designers moving forward, who can we look to for inspiration? And how can we create and support rich communities through our artful arrangement of soil, rock, and vegetation? What can we learn from our micro counterparts on site and their society? Before settlement, the way the Yalukit Willem shaped the land was influenced by a political ecology that was socially orientated and a social ecology that was localised. A complex kinship network of Kulin clans meant design techniques could be traded locally. Intergenerational teaching kept practices like land clearing specific. The people adapted techniques to suit their changing environment, and the physical environment adapted to their practices. Communities worked together in a socialist way to ensure no one went hungry, and a belief in the laws of Bunjil created design that was respectful and not invasive to the environment. This ultimately resulted in localised place-based connections and a complex kinship system which encode ecological knowledge in cultural memory. Fast forward to 1996 and the design interventions that have been placed into the site are from foreign social and political ecologies and make it difficult for any community to relate to the land. Acts like removing a cultural hub in the form of a toilet block with an Aboriginal flag painting support the Grand Prix over the people and essentially reinforce Australia's long economic-based agenda with the land rather than the people. In attempts to reconcile these actions, more damage was done to the social ecology of site. Elements like formal memorials draw on influences from Europe and inadvertently support a continuing Western hegemony of colonialism. These elements have contributed to the community's detached relationship with the land. If the history of Cleve Gardens has shown us that the richest communities are those with social ecologies that are localised and political ecologies that are socially orientated, then where do we go from here? What designers can we draw inspiration from? Examples of democratic agendas with the land have existed throughout history all over the world. Let's go back to 384 BC. Aristotle believed in the same sort of democratic relationship with the land, stating a man outside the city is either a beast or a god. In 1800s, Frenchman Alexis de Tocqueville proved to continue this view. He believed there is no authority on earth so inherently worthy of respect or invested with a right so sacred that he would want to let it act without oversight. But one man was particularly unique in that he spoke specifically at a ground level about how the trees and rocks can influence democratic life. Frederick Olmsted was a journalist, social critic, and landscape architect, and believed the privileges of the garden should be enjoyed about equally by all classes. His underlying social-orientated political views assist in creating a localised social ecology and, in turn, a richer community. This is Central Park. Originally, the land was owned by powerful and affluent families. It was what Olmsted described as their pleasure or kept grounds, and was heavily privatised. However, when Olmsted design for the area was selected, many built physical features resulted in a more civic behaviour and a more public social ecology. His first concept, the gregarious class of social receptive recreation, or our instinct to congregate with large groups of people, is prevailed physically in areas such as the mall. The wide open promenade lined with American elms encourages people to assemble and mingle. Similarly, his second concept for smaller, more intense areas are for what he describes as a pleasurable wakefulness of the mind, without stimulating exertion, the close relation of family life, the association of children, mothers, of lovers. This is seen in more intimate areas, where small clusters of trees and rocks are placed. His design intentionally allowed little family neighbourly parties to camp out over summer. If we visit Statue Square in Hong Kong, we see another example of democratic design. A landscape that is regularly a business district, filled with suits and ties on weekdays, but on the weekend, the simple urban planning act of closing the road has allowed Filipino domestic workers to trade, socialise, and have a sense of home. These designs should not be viewed in isolation. They are part of the new urbanism movement, a movement that is not so new. It has links to ancient democratic historians and traditional socially orientated communities, but is also informed by the views of designers, planners, and architects in recent history, those who address the shrinking democracy within the Anthropocene, and support design that ultimately achieves ecological democracy, those that aim to create a sense of place and build communities that are involved in environmental decision making. So what does this mean for Cleve Gardens? While it may not be the 4 kilometres of park that Olmsted had to work with, and it may not have a community as large as the Filipino domestic workers in Hong Kong, it is still public land. If the history has shown us anything, it is that any new design on this land should aim to achieve ecological democracy. It should allow the community to take ownership of the land and encourage placemaking, as opposed to inserting a design onto the site. Ultimately, as a designer, we need to keep the political ecology social and the social ecology local. In order to do this, I propose the government implements what I call the Victorian Ecological Democracy Landscape Architecture Strategy, to be used by all councils. Within each council, an ecological democracy officer is employed to oversee the process of all public design work, from start to finish, ensuring the design engages with the qualitative ecological democracy framework and achieves quantitative targets. The first principle requires the designers to keep political ecology social. Specifically, it aims to make designers collaborate with as much of the community as possible and as frequently as possible. Recommended techniques of engagement include modelling in situ, events, community workshops, all aiming to increase the community's connection to the final design more than a council's average flyer drop. The second principle requires the designer to keep the social ecology local. It ensures the design elements encourage activity and allow the community to take ownership of the site. Recommendations are made to create sweet spots. These are areas that are usable for people. They encourage events through facilities. They allow people to gather through the design of open space or sitting areas. They create comfortable, shaded or sunny environments to allow extended occupation. While it is great to make recommendations, it is purposeless without meeting targets and achieving results. For this reason, the design measures success in 2 quantifiable ways: a survey that questions the relationship members of the community have with the design, and an observational analysis of activity and usage rates. A design that has a higher rate of positive engagement is more successful, and importantly, councils that rank highly in these analyses will be nominated for the Community Contribution AILA Award. This form of recognition is likely to encourage designers to strive harder to achieve ecological democracy. We cannot reverse the history of Cleve Gardens, but we can learn from it. Through the Victorian Ecological Democracy Landscape Architecture Strategy, councils and designers are guided into creating landscapes that address Australia's lack of engagement with the community in public design. It will assist in abolishing our consistent use of stock standard materials and diminish our foreign view of a space's function. It will ultimately keep the political ecology social and the social ecology local, helping to finally re-engage people with their environment.